We're going to be talking about how they discovered gold in California and how the heck did they even know it was gold. But we need to start with John Sutter. John Sutter came from Switzerland, wound up in California because he heard that the Mexican government, which owned California at the time, was giving away free land. And he got some land from the Mexican government, and right here, he opened a place he called it New Helvetia, which means New Switzerland. There was no Sacramento at the time, just his fort. And his fort, it looked like this, and it was sort of a combination shopping mall and Motel 6. But he wanted to have a lot of people come live here, help make him rich. And if people wanted to come live here, they need to build houses, they need to make fences for their cows, and they need wood to do that. And he decided he was going to build a sawmill. The idea is, at the time, if I wanted to build a house, I had to chop down the tree myself, saw it all up by hand, and that's a lot of work. But I could use a sawmill to make water do all the work. So this is what John Sutter wanted to build. It's going to make water do all the work. I'm going to build this next to a river, and I'm going to divert water from the river so it flows through here. As it flows through, it makes this paddle wheel go up and down. When the paddle wheel goes up and down, it makes the saw go up and down. All I have to do then is shove in a tree, and out comes some nice lumber. So, John Sutter hired a guy named James Marshall. James Marshall was a carpenter, so he knew much more about building a sawmill than John Sutter did. John Sutter asked him to find a place to build the mill. There has to be a river, the right kind of trees, probably pine trees, and he didn't want it to be too far away because that way he could build a road up there. So James Marshall started walking around checking out the foothills east of Sacramento here. No Sacramento, remember, just Sutter's fort. We're going to go east about 40 miles, say about 50 or so kilometers, up in the mountains at about 3,000 feet, about 1,000 meters. Perfect place on the American River. And James Marshall hired some people, and they started building a sawmill. On January 24th, 1848, James Marshall was checking things out. The sawmill was right here. Here's the American River. Here's the water being diverted through the sawmill so they could run the sawmill. Marshall's checking things out, and right here, he looks down and he sees something sparkly. What's this? Ooh, I think maybe this is gold. Well, it's 1848. How the heck am I going to tell if it's gold? Well, you know, there's several things about gold. Probably the most important is it looks like gold. It's gold colored. This is what gold looks like. I mean, it is gold colored, bright, bright yellow. You cannot mistake it. On the other hand, this is fool's gold, iron pyrite. Look at the difference in color. That's the first thing you look at when you try to figure out if you have gold. Another thing that they knew about gold, gold is really, really soft. That's why it's so great for making jewelry. You can just hammer it out and it'll mush out flat. So if this was real gold and not a painted rock, and I hit it with a hammer, it just broke my hand. That is really stupid. If I hit it with a hammer, it's going to mush out flat. If I hit this piece of fool's gold with a hammer, it's going to break into a zillion pieces. So Marshall and his people tried that. They smashed it with a rock, and sure enough, it mushed out flat. Then they decided to check on one other thing. Nothing hurts gold. I mean, if I took my gold ring and boiled it all night, I'm just going to have a clean ring. There was a woman there at the sawmill. Her name was Jenny Wimer. Her husband Peter was Marshall's assistant. She did laundry and cooking for the guys. Now, she couldn't just run down to Walmart and buy a box of Tide Pods. She made her own soap. It was lovely stuff, pretty much made out of cow fat and fireplace ashes. Take the skin off of anything. And she said, you know, back in Georgia, I saw people doing gold mining, and I saw gold, and I know what it looks like. What you've got looks like gold. Let's boil it up in a vat of my lye soap overnight and see what happens. So that's what they did. They put Marshall's gold into a pot of Mrs. Wimer's soap, boiled it all night, and sure enough, nothing happened. So Marshall decided, you know what? I'm going to go down and ask Captain Sutter. By the way, he called himself Captain Sutter. We're not too sure he was ever captain of anything, but Captain Sutter sounds so much more important than Mr. Sutter. So Marshall heads on down to Sutter's fort. Remember, there's no roads, no city. He's walking in the rain. It's January. And he gets down there and he says, "Hey, Sutter, we're finding this stuff. It might be gold." Well, John Sutter can't just go online, look up Wikipedia. He gets out a big old book called an encyclopedia. How do I know if I have gold? So they tried the hammer test. Sure enough, Marshall's gold mushed out flat. They did even better than Mrs. Wimer's soap. They took a bottle of nitric acid and they poured it on Marshall's gold. Then they decided to take advantage of one other very important thing about gold. It's one of the heaviest things there is. It's heavier than lead. It's heavier than a rock. It's really, really heavy. So they got this. This is called a balance scale. You might have seen pictures of Lady Justice in front of a courtroom holding a scale like this, talking about the balance of justice. The easy thing about a balance scale is I put stuff in either side. Whichever side is the heaviest is going to hang down the farthest. So they took Marshall's gold and they put it in one side. Then they took a pile of Mexican silver coins, the same size as Marshall's gold, put it in the other side, and sure enough, the gold was a lot heavier. And that's how you tell if you have gold and it's 1848 and you can't run to a laboratory and figure out if it's really gold. Push the red button, Jared.